Hey, I'm sorry this video might be a little rushed. I'm gonna go out and do some errands with my mom, and I wanted to make sure that this video got up on time so I keep my promise of a video every day. So I was a fan, pardon that, I am a huge fan of Fullmetal Alchemist, the manga, the anime, and the Brotherhood anime that came out. And one of the questions that always gets asked when you bring up that is, which do you prefer, Fullmetal Alchemist or Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood? For the longest time, my answer was just always, I like them both, because that was true. I do think that both versions of Fullmetal Alchemist have a lot to offer in terms of story. But at the same time, as I've been retrospecting and thinking more about it, it basically comes down to this. I like the manga. I like the manga story of Fullmetal Alchemist. I like how everything plays out. I like the character development that happens. I like how the characters' stories grow. So, when it comes down to it, I think pretty much that I prefer Brotherhood, and it's for a couple of reasons. It's not to say that I don't think that the first anime was bad. I think it was very good, but upon thinking about some stuff, I realized that there are things that I really don't actually care about in terms of change they decided to make with the characters later on in the series. For example, I don't really like how Edward and Alphonse's mother ends up being Sloth. I don't like how Envy ends up being their brother. I really don't care that much for Dante. I think that she's very cliche as a female villain. Like, her motivations are just so bland, I think. And while Father isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, I just feel like his story was more interesting to me and his motivations were more interesting to me than Dante's. What else? I feel like what makes Brotherhood work for me is that the characters are more developed. And I mean the minor characters. Like, Roy gets a lot more growth. Scar gets a lot more growth. Risa gets a lot more growth. Winry, Izumi-sensei. And we get introduced to a lot of other characters, like Major Armstrong's older sister, the other half Ishvalian commander. We get a lot more stuff from King Bradley, from the other homunculus. I feel like the story that's told in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is a lot more satisfying to me. For example, like how like Roy's fight with Lust, to me, is like one of the most like iconic things about his character is that fight. And how he just basically is burning her until she eventually melts away. And the conflict with Envy that they have in that sewer thing is great. Like how Envy is broken down and basically commits suicide. Like, that to me was just so much more intense than what we got in Fullmetal Alchemist. And I felt like that was a more satisfying thing than, oh, they're related. That to me just didn't really work. So I really enjoyed how they did it there. I also like how Greed's character comes up. I forget the Jing leader's name, but that character and how they get infused and you get to see more of Greed's character, what it really means to be a homunculus, and how everything comes together with that storyline. Like, that to me was just really interesting and fun and innovative, and how like they brought in the Jing society and how like multicultural the universe of Brotherhood was. Like, you really had all these different you had diversity in a show that, you know, has no real world setting, but you still had all these different civilizations. They all looked different, they all different cultures, and how it all came together, and how they like came together for this one battle to help save their world. That to me was just very, very interesting and fun. And I felt like at the end of the manga and in the end of Brotherhood, despite there being certain convolutedness on certain levels, like I said, Father's story and his goals and aspirations are kind of a little cliche, but I feel it's less cliche than Dante's. Really made me happy with the way things wrapped up. Like, I was very happy about how there was this sense of completeness to the story. And it's something that there isn't one with FMA, the original, but when I compared the two, I'm just happier how the other one turned out. And one of the complaints I always hear about Brotherhood is how it kind of feels rushed and there's a little bit more of like fillery stuff. To me there is no filler in this show. It's just like there were longer segments than others because they're trying to do certain things. Like, there's a section where they basically just kill all the bad guys, and it's kind of like people are like, oh, it's too easy. And I agree, it was too easy, but then when Bradley comes, he pretty much shuts bitches down. Like, it was building up to that scene where you think that, oh, they're hopeful and they're getting it. And it's like, nope, wait, bam, 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 bam. So that was really interesting to me. And I also just prefer Bradley in Brotherhood. There are characters that I like. I think that they're good, but I just prefer how they're more fleshed out. And there are some that are not that fleshed out that I'm glad they weren't. Like, I never cared for how they dealt with Rose in FMA. I don't know why they had to bring her character back just to do what she did. I felt like it was kind of pointless. I didn't really, like, it was kind of a mixed thing about Lust, how she was kind of, sort of good. I mean, it was interesting, maybe, kind of, sort of, but at the same time, it was just, to me, it's just kind of like, you and Scar getting together, that would be hot, okay, I'd read the fan fiction, but other than that, like, what purpose did it really do to her character in the end? It never really clicked for me. I liked how she was this unrepentant, kind of wicked person in the manga, like, what she does with Havoc, oh my god, I hated her so much, but I prefer that. I prefer her having more to do in the anime than in the Brotherhood anime. Then there's also the issue of people saying that the first part of Brotherhood was rushed and they didn't feel much emotional attachment, like when certain stuff happened, like with what happened with Hughes. And I feel like that, while I understand that argument, I also kind of think it like this. The first parts of FMA and Brotherhood are the same, with the exception of maybe a few events. They're the same story being told. And I don't really see why they would just kind of copy and paste it to stretch it out instead of just compressing it, because that's not the story we're here to see. We already saw that story, in the years when we first got the first FMA. Let's just go through that so to refresh people of what happened, and let's just go through. I mean, I never got over Hughes' death. That is still one of the most tragic and heartfelt things I have ever read and saw. And and it's still, like, even seeing in Brotherhood was still kind of like, oh god, I can't deal with this, because that was one of the things, like, no one has spoiled me about that. So when that scene first happened in FMA, I was just, like, dumbstruck. I'm like, they killed the fun guy? They killed Hughes? What? No, he coming back, right? Nope, didn't come back, never. That was really emotional, and I think that's one of the reasons why people prefer FMA, because that impact was just so hard and strong. But that's still from the manga, that's still from the original source material, and if they had always followed it through, then people would still see, Brotherhood wouldn't be this, like, unemotional thing. It's one compiled story, but they had to cut it off at the middle because the manga was still going on, and they didn't want to have filler, and they would have to do that in order to catch up later on. So, while I get that that's a problem for some people, it wasn't a problem for me because I understood why certain things weren't stretched out the way that they were in the original. And I didn't see why I needed them to be. I already had the original. I didn't need to see that story told again for that many episodes. Just give me what I need to get to. I wanted to see the manga come to life. And so that's what I got. Yeah, I mean, it's little details. It's the details about how stuff is added in Brotherhood that really, to me, make it a superior story. And not to say that the original isn't good, because I still like the regular FMA. I own it. I think it's worth having. I think it's worth checking out. I think it tells its own unique story in its own way. But if I'm talking about how I feel about, if I'm comparing them, I like Brotherhood more. I just feel like the characters I cared for in FMA were still there, but they were better. They grew more. They had more to deal with. They had more to work with. There was just so much more character interaction and character growth for the characters that I really loved. And so when I rewatched the series, the story that they were telling in the original is good and interesting, but you can just, to me, it feels like it's not 100% right. I feel like when I watch Brotherhood, I'm like, yeah, this was the story I was supposed to have. So I would watch it up to the point where they split, then I would watch Brotherhood and I'd be like, yeah, that just fits together so well. So I feel like the real reason why Brotherhood isn't as successful is because those emotional hit points that we got early on in FMA are not as harsh in Brotherhood because they already exist. We already saw those things. We already knew what was going to happen to these characters. We already knew how traumatizing that was for our cast. We were just rehashing that. And because we were just rehashing it in a quicker way, they didn't hold as much weight. And therefore people use that to judge the whole series. It wasn't as emotional or whatever. But to me, I feel like it's just how they had to tell the story to get it by quicker. We didn't need to, I mean, for me, I just don't see, I don't need to see those things again. I already have it on DVD. But I realize people think differently. I know people prefer the original because of how it does certain things. And like I said, I feel like it has its value. I really do. I don't dislike it, and I do still like them both. But I love FMA, but I really, really love Brotherhood and the manga. And I feel like that's really how it fits to me. And also, this isn't to say that every time the manga is better than the anime. I don't think this is true. I think there are times where the anime can flesh out things better and make things work in a more complex way that sometimes the manga doesn't do. There are a lot of extra scenes that get thrown into the anime. It's kind of like, I like how they did that. I like how they did develop that more. But with this, it's more like they're almost two separate stories that have the same beginning, and it's just a matter of I have my own preference. But I know that's up for debate. So if you guys, which one do you prefer? Do you like FMA more? Do you like Brotherhood more? Or does it really just, you like them both, but there are things that you could pick and choose? For me, it's kind of like Brotherhood is what I prefer. There's very little I would take out of Brotherhood and replace with stuff from FMA. Where there's a lot of stuff from FMA I would take out and replace with stuff from Brotherhood. So I guess and that's really why I put one above the other.